The month of April is almost over, which means our subscriber battle with the Raiders Report is almost over for this month. And they've made a strong push on draft week, and we got to finish strong and take them down. We're 90 and change subs behind them. If you want Daily Bears content for free, and if you want to take down the Raiders Report and Mitchell Rentz, hit that sub button. I would greatly appreciate it. I'm Harrison Graham. You're watching Chicago Bears Now. With the NFL draft having come and gone, let's dip back into NFL free agency. We'll take a look at some top Bears free agent targets following the NFL draft. First, you look at what Ryan Poles and company did in the NFL draft. 5 players in total: Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, the headliners here, the USC quarterback and Washington wide receiver. Karan Amageji, the offensive tackle out of Yale in the 3rd round. You add a punter in Torrey Taylor, who will be a big upgrade from Trenton Gill in round 4. And then you trade back in to get Kansas defensive lineman edge rusher Austin Booker in the 5th. I think when I look at this now, these are the top Bears needs roster-wise. Defensive tackle. You for sure have 3 guys you feel at least decent about, and Jervon Dexter, Andrew Billings, and Zach Pickens. You added Keith Randolph Jr., the UDFA out of Illinois. I'm intrigued by him. I think he could make the team, but don't be shocked if the Bears at least dip their toes in there. Edge is certainly a possibility as well, even though they just added Austin Booker. I could see a vet coming back in here. Center, look, you got Ryan Bates. You added Colton Shelton, but maybe that's fine short-term. Long-term, though, I'm not so sure. I'm not saying there's a long-term option out there, but I still think that's a question mark. Offensive guard to add some depth there, and then tight end as well. You got your top 2 guys, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, but tight end 3 very much up for grabs, so don't be shocked if Chicago looks to add another piece there. What is the Bears' biggest need? If you had to say one position or just one kind of need in general, what do you think it is? Go ahead and let me know. All right, let's take a look at some free agent targets now. Calais Campbell, the ageless wonder who spent last season with the Atlanta Falcons. I think he would be great here for a multitude of reasons. Number one, he could still play at a pretty damn high level. You look at his numbers from last year, really good, 17 QB hits, 6.5 sacks, had 5.5 the year before in Baltimore. He spent the last few years in a 3-4 scheme, so obviously, you know, he'd have to be comfortable going back to a 4-3, but he's played both in his career. And I will say this, in a 4-3, I think he'd be very versatile. I think you could play him some at edge. You could play him some at 3-tech, even nose on the occasion as well, like in obvious pass rushing downs. I would like to bring him in here. He'd be like a solid 5th defensive lineman, kind of that 5th starter that rotates in and plays quite a bit. We'll see if he wants to keep playing at almost 38 years old, but if he does, I would certainly be excited about it. How about Carl Lawson, the edge, who has been with the Jets? He had some issues last year. Back injury caused him to miss 11 games. Didn't have much production when he did play. 0 sacks in those 6 games. So that's a concern. That's a question mark. If he could get back to pre-2023 form, I would be interested. Not sure where the Bears view him at this point. A little bit of a wild card here. Connor Williams, who has been a starting guard in this league, a starting center in this league. That's where the Miami Dolphins played in the last couple of years, where he played at a high level. They opted to let him walk and signed Aaron Brewer in free agency because Williams did tear that ACL. He is still recovering from that. It's unclear if he'll be ready for training camp or even week 1, which is why I believe he hasn't signed up to this point in time. I remember his agent, who I believe is Drew Rosenhaus, said, yeah, we're going to take our time on this thing as he's still recovering. You look at what the Bears have, like, yes, again, Shelton and Bates are 2 options. Jenkins and Davis, when healthy, are solid at guard, but we know they're both injury-prone. Bates and Shelton, it's not like they're high-level guys. So if he gets cleared and is healthy and you can get him for cheap, I'm not opposed to bringing Connor Williams in here because he's a starting caliber center and guard. I mean, even if worst-case scenario, he's like a swing interior guy for a year, which for him is probably not maximizing his value, I would still like that, but I think there's a chance he could start. It would give you options. I don't think right now it would be a move that could happen, but maybe an injury pops up in OTAs or in training camp. But if it does, I think Connor Williams becomes that much more viable. Would you sign Connor Williams? If you would, type Y for yes. If you're like, nah, I'm good, type in for no. Here's what Bears fans feel on this one. Couple of internal guys we'll discuss here. First up is Yannick Ngakoue, who not great last year. 4 sacks in 13 games isn't horrible, but his streak of 8 or more in 7 straight seasons to start a career ended. And then also, he just wasn't that good. Like, you look at the advanced numbers, like pass rush win rate, very low. PFF stats, very low. Like, he just does not win those one-on-ones consistently. I thought he played a little better once they brought in Montez Sweat and he drew more attention. I'm not opposed to bringing him back for cheap, but he made $10 million last year. I mean, we got to talk 4 at most, and I think it would have to be like a base of 2. So if he comes back, I think it's got to be on a pretty severe pay cut. Marcedes Lewis is, even though he's about 10 years older than Ngakoue, 9 years older, I would actually rather have him, even though he's not going to give you much as a receiving tight end at this point. I want him back. I've made that clear. I've said that multiple times. I think he's still a top 10 to 15 blocking tight end in the NFL, which is exactly what he would be as tight end 3. Cole Kmet, who's a good blocking and receiving tight end. Gerald Everett, who's a better receiving tight end than blocking tight end. And then Lewis would be the opposite, better blocking than receiving. You kind of have all your bases covered there. Your tight end room would be upgraded because Everett is a clear upgrade over Robert Tonyan. Lewis said at the end of the year he'd still like to come back and play another season in the NFL. He didn't specify necessarily like with Chicago, and obviously I think Luke Getsy was a reason why he signed here due to his Packers ties, but the offense isn't like crazy different. He wouldn't have to learn a lot more, and he's a vet who's been through it all. So if he's down to come back, even if he wants to sign in training camp just like he did last year, that would be perfectly fine with me because I think he would be worthy of making this team. We'll continue with some more Bears free agent targets in a moment, but I do want to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS to get a deposit match up to $100. It's daily fantasy made easy. 3 million active users daily playing Prize Picks and launching out entries. And it's simple how it works. 2 to 6 player entries. You can choose more, choose less for NBA, college basketball when that's in season, college football, obviously right now Major League Baseball, NHL playoffs as well. You also have some season-long projections out right now. DeAndre Swift, more than 850.5 rushing yards. I love it, especially with the receiving threats now. Swift should get some lighter boxes. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, as much as it pains me to say, I think 7.5 touchdowns is too low, so I'll take the more on that as well. 10 to win 30. Hopefully cash that one in. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. You're going to win up to 100 times your entries, depending on certain ones that you do right now. So use the code CLNS, get the deposit match to up to $100, and play around a little bit. Figure out what you like, and trust me, you are going to enjoy, and the opportunity to make money is right there. Okay, 5 more here. Mecole Hardman, wide receiver who spent his first 4 years in Kansas City, signed last season with the Jets, and then got traded back to the Chiefs mid-season. Obviously, this wide receiver trio is pretty much set as your top 3. As of now, I would have Tyler Scott as wide receiver 4, but there's still questions there. Velus Jones, I think there's big questions there. Dante Pettis, I think he's more of a return option, which is something Mecole Hardman can provide as well. And he's younger, and he's faster than a guy like Dante Pettis. I just wonder with this new kickoff rule and if they think a guy like Hardman could give them more just overall usage than a guy like Velus Jones. And by the way, Ryan Poles was in that front office in Kansas City when they drafted Hardman. Could you see them bring a guy like that in here on a vet minimum contract to at least compete for a roster spot? If it's the vet min, I'm in. If it's anything more, I'd probably pass. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is still out there as well, who is a bizarre player. He's very inconsistent, especially in the regular season, but he tends to make good plays in the postseason. And I think you'd only make this move if the Bears were worried about Tyler Scott, T. Scott making a jump in year 2. If they were concerned that wasn't going to happen, maybe he's a guy you sign later in the offseason, maybe after OTAs if they're concerned about Tyler Scott. But I think as a wide receiver 4, that's a great role for him. Rotate in on the outside, run some go routes, be kind of a possession speed guy on the outside who is known to make a big play or two, especially in some big moments. Ryan Tannehill, who we talked about some going into the NFL draft. I'll mention him again here. I was open and liked the idea of bringing in a veteran quarterback as a guy who's played a lot as your true backup to Caleb Williams. Now, I do think the Bears really like and value Tyson Bagent, and obviously he's very, very cheap, and I do think he'd be on the 53 no matter what, even if Ryan Tannehill did make this team. I don't really expect this to happen. One, I think Tannehill is going to wait and see if there's an injury somewhere and if he could sign to compete for a starting job. And two, I just don't think the Bears want to spend, notable money on a backup quarterback right now. And Tannehill's probably going to cost you at least $5-6 million. So don't think it happened. I'd like it if it did, but it's probably not going to alter your season that much either way. How about Emmanuel Ogbah, who been a pretty solid player? He spent some time in Kansas City as well when Ryan Poles was there, so I do wonder if that could play a role. Had 5.5 sacks last year, bounced back after an injury-riddled season in 2022. He's had some pretty good years in the past as like a number 2, number 3 guy on some different defenses over the course of his career. And you look at where the Bears sit, I still don't think you have a clear-cut answer as your number 2 edge guy. I think as of now it would be DeMarcus Walker, which is fine. I mean, Walker's a solid player. He could play inside, he could play out. He's versatile. He brings a ton of energy. You drafted Austin Booker. You got Jake Martin in the mix. Is Dominique Robinson going to be on this team? Khalid Kareem. Those are a couple of other guys in the fold. I think I've decided my top 2 free agents are Emmanuel Ogbah, and then really Calais Campbell is my top guy. That is a player I would like to see the Bears sign because he could play 3-tech, he could play edge, he's still very productive, and he would offer so much value in that locker room that is still very, very young. Pick a player. Who would you rather have? Type CC for Calais Campbell, EO for Emmanuel Ogbah. I'd be happy with either, but if I had to pick one, I think I'd have to go with Calais Campbell. And then lastly, I mentioned earlier you could use some guard depth. Dalton Risner, who he's a starter, so I don't think he would choose to sign here as a backup. But, this is one of those things where maybe there's an injury or maybe he would view this situation as, okay, I'm not starting, but if they gave me a little guaranteed money, I'm behind 2 guards who have injury history in Tevin Jenkins and Nate Davis. Maybe he would be open to that idea. I have to think he's going to find a starting gig somewhere, which is why I don't think this would happen unless an injury occurred. So keep that in mind. But he's still out there, and as long as he is, he's at least an option for Ryan Poles and Chicago. So we'll have to wait and see in that regard. So there you go, 10 free agent targets, a few that I like more than others. Calais Campbell, Carl Lawson. You got Connor Williams, Yannick Ngakoue, Marcedes Lewis, Mecole Hardman, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Ryan Tannehill, and then Emmanuel Ogbah and Dalton Risner. Name a free agent that you think the Bears should sign between now and training camp. Drop his name down in the comments. Internal guy, Marcedes Lewis. External guy, Calais Campbell. Both 38 years old. Why not? Let's bring the OGs in here and have ourselves a season. Appreciate you guys for tuning in to Chicago Bears Now. And by the way, if you tune into our live show Monday, sorry for the technical problems. We'll be back at it on Thursday. So subscribe, turn on notifications. We greatly, greatly appreciate it.